My guest this week on the Europe Conversation is Palestinian Foreign Affairs Minister Varsen Shahin. She says she's shocked and disappointed at Europe's failure to act against Israel for its human rights breaches in Gaza and the West Bank. Dr. Varsen Shahin, Palestinian Minister for Foreign Affairs, thank you very much for joining us on Euronews. Salam alaikum.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting me.
What was widely anticipated happened, which was that EU member states decided not to take action against Israel for its war in Gaza and the situation in the West Bank. Many member states really can't agree to do that, and it's obviously despite the fact that the EU has a report that said that Israel has breached EU human rights standards. What is your response to that?
Shocking and disappointing, because everything is crystal clear. I mean, there's a EU report that clearly stated that Israel has been violating 38 violations were indicated in that report. And it's an EU report. And the EU-Israel Association Agreement is also clear in its Article 2 on anybody part of the agreement should be in compliance with international law and international humanitarian law. And when an EU report says that there are 38 violations, that should be taken very seriously. And these violations have been unfolding in front of everybody's eyes. I mean, the whole world has been seeing what is happening in Gaza. The killing, the atrocities, the war crimes, the weaponization of food, the killing of people queuing to get a pack of flour. All of this is clear. It doesn't need more assessment. And yet, there was a failure on agreeing to take actual measures.
I mean, those member states would say that that's the point, isn't it? That actually it won't deter anything, it won't help the situation on the ground for Palestinians, and that it would close the contact with Israel.
Yes, but this line has been open for so many years, and the violations are continuing. The time is now to say enough is enough, and wrongdoing, any perpetrator of wrongdoing should be held accountable. No state is above the law.
What we hear from Israel is also that Hamas is taking aid from the mouths of Palestinian people in Gaza as well.
Look, there are conflicting reports on this. But regardless, whatever is being offered in Gaza is not meeting the needs of the Gazans. There was a modality in the past, and that modality was working because the international organizations were distributing the aid, and they had like 300 points of distribution. Today we have a new modality with 4 points of distribution. Invariably, you will have crowds, massive numbers of people queuing to get food. Today, aid is not it's not received by the people, and it's causing a lot of damage and deaths. Today there are more than 700 people who have lost their lives, killed while queuing for food, and this has to stop.
One of the points also made by the EU is that the reason they may not take action against Israel now is it's pending the materialization of this new agreement where the EU and Israel have agreed to substantially increase the amount of aid into Gaza, reopening humanitarian routes in Egypt, Jordan and other areas, and substantially make sure that people can get access to not just food, but to medical items. Is that something that you're hopeful of?
Well, these are the requests by the EU, and I hope the EU puts very strong scrutinizing measures on monitoring the compliance with the agreement. Because if we look at the last week, since the agreement was made, we see more killings of people. We see people killed at the queuing points. We see children brutally murdered while in tents awaiting medical care from another tent. So these are the kinds of questions that need to be asked today, and asked in a very serious manner. And reports should not only come from Israel, because Israel has denied entry of journalists, has denied the work of a lot of the NGOs, and is not allowing anybody to come up with anything that is credible.
Well, speaking of influence, your own president, Mahmoud Abbas, has called for Hamas to release the hostages immediately, to give their weapons up, to root out Hamas, and to essentially say that in any future Palestinian state, Hamas won't rule the Gaza Strip. But, the Palestinian Authority isn't even involved in any of the negotiations at the moment. It doesn't have any influence.
Yes, the Palestinian Authority is very relevant because the Palestinian Authority today functions in Gaza. We have people in the health sector, we have people in the education sector, in water, in energy, in social services. We have an operations room that has all the Palestinian ministries. It has most of the international organizations that meets on a regular basis and discusses issues in Gaza and meeting the demands and the needs in Gaza, which we know are monumental and cannot be met by the Palestinian Authority alone. So we are relevant.
Hamas has ruled Gaza with an iron fist for nearly 20 years now. So the Palestinian Authority hasn't had influence in the way that you're saying it has, not from a cultural perspective or a political perspective. There's been so much violence against Palestinians by Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and the PA haven't been able to influence anything there.
But not everybody in Gaza is Hamas.
Of course, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying the way they rule Gaza.
Yes, but things will change. And if people see a future that gives them some hope, going into the future whereby they are respected as human beings, things will fluctuate.
One other issue, though, let's say we're getting to that, is that there's always been complaints as far back as Yasser Arafat, but also the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, that there's deep corruption and nepotism within that organisation. And you talk to young Palestinians and they say the same thing. Okay, we don't support Hamas, but the alternative isn't going to really lead us down a very strong path either. How can you persuade, in fact, not just persuade people, but how will you root out that level of corruption?
Look, corruption is everywhere.
I know, but that's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse,
you can't just
but
say
corruption is everywhere. And remember, we are under occupation, and occupation corrupts. Occupation corrupts.
Well, culture exists anyway.
Funding from outside corrupts. Not being able to direct your organizations the way you want corrupts. So there are so many variables in Palestine that lead towards that end. That is not an excuse. But today we have a reform and development agenda by this government in Palestine, and we're working on all aspects to curtail corruption, to decrease nepotism, to ensure that our organizations are governed by rules and regulations applicable to all. This takes time.
Can you see any politician or political group in Israel that you could do business with to eventually have and create a Palestinian state? There's so much aggression and confrontation. It looks so further apart than it's ever been, really.
Well, to tell you, with this rightist government, it's very difficult. Because if you hear what this government stands for, what the ministers utter, the incitement against the Palestinians and anything that is Palestinian, it would be very difficult. But that doesn't mean that we should give up. We need, the Israelis should create the body that can take them onwards.
And with the Trump administration, do you have any hope now?
Well, we keep the hope alive, because we are two-staters, and we believe that two-state solution is the only viable solution, because Israel will not accept to be a democratic state for all its citizens, and we will not accept to continue living the status quo or an apartheid state.
A lot of the Arab countries, in particular Egypt, but also Saudi Arabia, even Jordan, although the King of Jordan has been very vocal in his opposition to what Israel is doing, the other Arab countries have not been strenuously trying to support or push for international measures in support of Palestinians. Does that disappoint you?
No, because today the Arab support is more than ever.
But in Egypt it's not. The Egyptians are charging Palestinians an arm and a leg, more money than they could ever afford to just simply leave the Gaza Strip and stay in Egypt for some safety. You see those stories all the time.
No, but if you look at what, for example, I'll give you one example. When President Trump said about his intention to create the Riviera, there was very quick response from all Arab states, individually and collectively, on the no displacement issue of Palestinians. And today, more than ever, they are adamant on ensuring that normalization will not happen unless there is a move towards a political path.
So do you
and
think,
that's important.
Do you believe then someone like Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia and in the Qataris and so on, that they are actually actively, behind the scenes at least, pushing Trump to create a two-state solution, or at least to stop the war in Gaza? I mean, do you have any information about that?
I think all countries are sending messages to the United States on the immediate ceasefire, the entrance of humanitarian aid, the unimpeded entrance, the opening of the crossing, the easing up on the Gaza Strip, and the two-state solution. I mean, today, Saudi Arabia is co-sponsoring this international conference. So today, Saudi Arabia is very vocal about no normalization unless there is a political path. And for us, Saudi Arabia is a very important Arab country.
Just before I let you go, Dr. Shahin, in the future Palestinian state, what does it look like to you? Obviously, there would have to be Israeli guarantees, security guarantees, and so on. Is it a pluralistic society?
It would be a pluralistic society. There will be a place for women. I'm a woman, and I'm a Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I'm Christian, and I'm from Armenian origin. Where would you find that? But you see it in Palestine. So Palestine would be a place for everyone that is peace-loving, everyone that respects international law, everyone that respects any agreement signed by Palestine with its neighbors, and everyone that believes that Palestinians deserve to live and deserve to be contributors to the world, just like they have been.
Okay, Dr. Varsen Shahin, Palestinian Foreign Affairs Minister, thank you very much for joining us on Euronews.
Thank you very much.